Let's take a look at the basics of UV mapping in Maya, at least of viewing UV maps on primitive objects and how we can begin to set up our workspace to work with UVs. I'm here in Maya 2022, and I'm going to choose from my kind of presets of viewport displays a two-panel configuration by clicking on this two-panel icon. And I'm going to set my second panel, my left-hand panel, to be not a perspective view or any of my typical orthographic views, but rather from my panel submenu, I'm going to set it to be a UV editor. And now if I create a polygonal primitive, let's say a cube, that is a little large for a cube, let's say units of 10 perhaps, create. When nothing is selected, my UV editor will be empty. When an object is selected, I see the UVs unwrapped, or the UVs, let's just say, presented. And the UVs are my texture coordinate space for this object. So how will a texture that sits in this very first square between 0, 0 and 1, 1, how will it be assigned to this object? And we can see that each face occupies a distinct space in UV texture space. So each side of this object can have a different piece of texture data assigned to it. And if I look at another primitive, let's say a cylinder, the texture coordinates are distinct for that. I have my top, my bottom, my sides. If I were to have let's make a sphere. My sphere is unwrapped in a different way, where it is maximizing its space within the 0, 0 to 1, 1 location. So each of these are represented in UV space as the method for textures to be assigned to those objects. If I were to duplicate one of these objects, let's say I duplicated my cube and made some changes to it in the model, maybe first of all, let's just see. If I change locations of model components, notice my UVs are not changing. The UVs are not tied to spatial configurations of these sub-objects. They stay in exactly the same location. And problematically, if I were to, let's say, extrude an object and scale it, and extrude it again, I have made several new faces that do not have UV coordinates at all. These new faces here exist only as lines in my UVs. So these will not get textures assigned to them. And this is one of the fundamental reasons why we need to be able to be competent and comfortable adjusting our UVs in our polygonal models and be able to control expressly how we want textures to fit not only to simple primitive models, but to models that are more sophisticated and that have much more kind of new modeling and polygons developed on them through the modeling process.